All right, so first, apologies to you guys. Yesterday, we didn't get a live stream out there to you, so that's the first time that's happened in about a year. So today, we're going to kind of make it up for you. We'll have a portfolio update at our 3 o'clock. You don't want to miss that. And then today, we'll be talking a little bit more about Hedera and what's going on with it. We've had Hedera Hashgraph on the show many times. Their executive team, we've kind of broken down what Hedera is, all that good stuff. We'll talk a little bit about that today, but of course, it's going to be a good one, hopefully, for you guys. My name is Paul Barrow. Welcome back into Tech Path. One of the things I would do is look back in our library because we've done HBAR videos for quite some time. It is one of the projects that we do like. It's in our portfolio, and I've continued to kind of look at this as a overarching potential for what Web3, but more importantly, how blockchain is going to work with enterprise. And I'll explain all that before we get started. I do want to thank our sponsor, and that is Ledger today. Get in on this because the Ledger Sachs is still on pre-order right now. I think it's still scheduled for an early Q1 or Q1, I think March, for the release. But if you can't wait for the stacks, then definitely get in to some of their other products, which of course, the Nano X is a great one, the S Plus. There's a ton available here, but the main thing that you're trying to get into with Ledger is self-custody. This is something we teach and coach and really kind of get as many people as we can on self-custody. This is your first starting point. All you have to do is use our link below. It does help the channel out. All right, so let's get into it today. And the news that broke this week that everybody was really focusing on and why HBAR was moving like it was is this right here, and that is the announcement with Dell, which has joined the Hedera Governing Council. I'll explain what that is and why that matters for some of you that are new to HBAR. But DLT and developing applications for highly decentralized mission-critical environments such as edge computing, which is Dell Edge. Think of that as their AWS. We'll explain a little bit about that further into the story today. There was a couple of things I wanted to highlight here. This was a good story by the block. Let me kind of zoom up on that for you so you guys can read it a little bit. So obviously Dell's going to jump in. And when you look at the enterprise side of this, and this is the thing that to me is very critical for blockchain and Web3 to really be successful, is you have to win the enterprise state because the enterprise is what runs Web 2. And that is the reason why HBAR and Hedera in general is such an important technology component. So further into the article, it says part of the governing council, Dell will run a consensus mode or node, which is used to determine transaction ordering. Members of the governing council also manage the software related to the network. This is another big advantage. I'll show you a chart of that in a bit. We're doing this to understand policy implications and processes. This is in turn of the governing council and running these external decentralized nodes and why that matters. Scale is really what this is looking at. Like Hedera, Dell has innovation at scale and at its core. They talk a lot about where Edge is going, Dell Edge, which is as I said, their AWS, and where that might be in terms of the big push toward enterprise computing as a decentralized model. Because remember, enterprise computing actually over the past few decades has went to a more centralized. Only recently in the past few years have we seen really the expansion to cloud and decentralized. The reality is we're looking at this technology specific point of interest for us. It's not about being crypto exchange. It's about how does this technology solve problems for enterprises, what I'm talking about. And for us as a company, how can we potentially leverage it better to serve our customers and improve processes and potentially build products around this? That to me is another major statement by Dell that could be very, very good for HBAR, but more importantly, very good for blockchain and Web3. Here was Dell's VP of Data Innovation. I'm going to show you a little bit about what he said because there were some cool elements he was hitting on here. Let me go to this clip.
Not only do we make the highly visible consumer products, but Dell also manufactures a lot of the infrastructure and data protection plumbing that runs the internet, basically.
And so what made you decide, hey, this is the time for us to join the governing council of a blockchain?
Well, I think there's two reasons really, Zenobia. The first one is, as I mentioned, we have a lot of infrastructure products, and our customers are increasingly moving from centralizing them in one location to distributing them across multiple locations, whether it's multi-cloud or whether it's edge. So we believe that a
All right, so I'm
distributed
going to pause it
ledger
right there,
will be.
but what he just said is exactly what the future of blockchain is. It's the future of Web3. It's also the future of decentralized, finance, the decentralized IDs, the aspect of what we'll see in terms of the gaming industry. Many brands will start to understand how enterprise decentralization is going to be a good thing. And I think it's interesting because it all seems to come around over time. And I've seen everything from the AS400s all the way down to what we've seen here in the cloud computing era, and now what we're getting ready to step into, which is decentralized. So here's Dell's, edge technology, which is essentially their focus on where they're going. But I want you to see how far into edge of what they're trying to do: manufacturing, retail, digital cities, healthcare, utilities, transportation. I mean, they're essentially running edge, meaning Dell is looking for solutions that applies to, and you've heard me say this many, many times, these Web 2 titans out there in all these different market sectors that are just really a handful of steps away from Web 3 and decentralized data services, and eventually connecting to business services as well as consumer services around the world. Here's the Governing Council right here on Hedera. If you go to their website, just get on the Governing Council. One thing you'll notice is there's 39 spots right here. That's number 39. It's not been filled yet, as you can kind of go around, but there's quite a few in here. I'll zoom up on this a little bit to kind of give you guys a little bit of understanding. There's Avery. You've got a few companies in here. There's T-Mobile, obviously EDF, Google, of course, IBM coming in there. There's quite a few. I mean, and the potential here is LG, which we've talked about before. A lot now coming, and then of course Dell has not been added here yet, but will be soon. So cool stuff here, I think, with the potential of what this might be for the enterprise side of things. So I'm still very excited about what Hedera can do as a technology, but more importantly, of how it can bridge the future of blockchain and the usability of it. Let me get into let me fly through a few things here, just so you guys can kind of understand. LG doubled down. As you guys know, we did a big CES video on this. Go back and check our CES 2023. But they doubled down on the smart TV, metaverse push. All that was done through Hedera. So remember that. There was a lot in that video. You can guys go watch it. The other thing is there's a lot more movement now, because these are different projects that are actually developing on Hedera. So here's Sansar, again, another metaverse potential, customized avatars. Again, this is one of those things. And you have to have these elements for this. I'm going to just play this, but I won't play the audio. But the point is that I'm getting at is that with Hedera, they're breaking into Web3 in a pretty big way. So pretty cool, in the sense that you need these kinds of advancements to really take it to the next level, because it gives other companies, whether it's a Web 2 company or even a Web 3 company, the ability to understand where the pathway is. Because everybody, they're followers. Here's a music verse coming in on Hedera. Kind of interesting, Not sure about this one, though. I'll take a look at it. I need to learn about that one for sure. Here's Orbit, which is a new 3D, kind of almost streaming kind of concept that's going to be working within Hedera. Lots of stuff. And then this statement is interesting because the NFT market, HBAR might be, Hedera and the token HBAR, might be a big part of this in the 2023 resurrection of the NFT market, which I believe is coming back. We're actually in the early stages of it right now. So, from a standpoint of NFTs, I think the bull market's actually in play. This is an interesting notable developments and partnerships in 2022 that underscored Hedera's potential for more growth in the NFT market. That was a lot of the things that we've talked about in the past. And of course, part of that was LG Art Lab. And you'll notice right here, LG Art Lab, I think they had like 150 projects, but as the market continued to work out inner details, HBAR's volatile movements, projects continue to build on top of Hedera. And right here, yeah, here's the deal. LG Art Lab updated, confirmed that it was already building over 150 projects on the Hedera network. So again, another big reason we're about to see a lot of new projects start to crack open, possibly be a high utility use case from Web 2 to Web 3 is the key. It's basically what you've seen happening within Render, what you've seen happening within Polygon, even ETH to a certain extent, but Polygon is probably the poster child for that just because there's integration into a lot of Web 2 companies that are converting to Web 3 literally on the fly. Other things here, here's Hedera. This was the LG launch, so they are already, 1 million platform participants. This was kind of interesting to me. When you see the smart TVs go at scale, and then you look at who is going to be the play, because believe me, LG is going to be just the first to follow. You're going to get Vizio, Sony, all the guys that are going to come in on this, eventually get to a point where possibly NFT integration can be done, where possibly we might see some sort of blockchain and possibly Web3 gaming, much like what we see already in the browser aspect of it right now, could play into the TVs of the future. Here was LG Art Lab basically talking about the Blade Wallet. I'll play a little bit here on the Blade Wallet. This was some of the announcements here. And on Blade Wallet,
Hedera Network delivers simple and secure transactions. LG OLED TV can now be your digital canvas. LG Art Lab newly supports Blade Wallet, powered by Hedera Network, which delivers simple and secure transactions. LG
yeah,
OLED
so
TV can
pretty
now
basic,
be
but the
your
point
digital
is
canvas.
that, pause that. The point is that you're going to see more of these kinds of integrations that start to play into. Now, I'm not necessarily a big advocate of the Blade Wallet, but if this is happening, the likelihood is we're going to see more integrations in the future. So that's what I'm looking forward to right now. Here you can learn a little bit more about the Blade Wallet. Just go to bladewallet.io if you are into the LG space. You can get it, of course, out there on the ecosystem, so pretty simple. Here was another one they were talking about. Yeah, here's the other thing that I like is that they're doing a lot of updates already, so that tells me that there's a lot of dedication to the project. I always worry about these early stage, projects like this, especially wallets. The fact that they're really rolling this out in a pretty significant way, I think that's a good thing. We may see this one come out pretty interesting as a potential for the future. The other thing that they're eyeing is next generation gaming partnerships. And of course, this was the Ubisoft news that they had. A couple of notes here today. It announced the, partnering with obviously Ubisoft in next generation gaming. And then of course you have the Governing Council, which Ubisoft is part of now, going to operate a node. One of its first focuses on the gaming industry. And then they're joining, at that time, there was only 25 when this occurred. And the last time we talked to Mance Harmon, they kind of outlined this in their roadmap. And I'm impressed with the fact that they stay very diligent in achieving those roadmap milestones, because some projects don't necessarily do that. No projects mentioned, but you probably know some of the ones I'm talking about. Here was a video that we did with Mance Harmon. And he made some very interesting statements here. Just to let you listen in on this, because you can go check the whole video out, but I'll play a clip for you.
As those transactions flow in, they kind of just sort of pile up on one another, to put it in a very loose layman terms. And the nodes in the network are able to collect all of these transactions into the local copy of their data structure, which is a hash graph. It's a formal mathematical structure that contains all of these transactions. Similar to how blockchain contains all the transactions in a chain, hash graph contains all the transactions but in a graph, and it does so in parallel. And there's no need to slow anything down. The nodes, as the transactions flow in, the nodes operate in such a way that they can look at that graph and come to an agreement on the order of the transactions within the graph, And this is all being done in parallel. What that means, practically speaking, is that the energy consumption is tiny by comparison. In fact, University College London published a report showing that Hashgraph and the Hedera network.
I'm going to pause it right there. There's something there that you guys need to pay attention to, because this is something that I've talked about many times, is this enterprise shift from Web 2 to Web 3. Whoever wins that, I think, wins Web 3 or is going to be one of the big players in it. You've heard me talk about Avalanche being a part of that. And Avalanche's strategy is a bit different, but has a lot of similar markers to what Hedera is doing. Hedera is taking a different approach. They're going after the Governing Council. The Governing Council is leading enterprise in these major industry sectors. Avalanche is moving into these partnerships. So I think it's two different kinds of strategies, which I like both. It'll be interesting to see how they play out, because when you get into governing strategies like what Hedera is doing with major multi-market industry and sectors, then you're leaning on those guys, those companies, to leverage out. So like Dell, to leverage out into providing those kinds of services into Web3. So you're hoping that they'll do that. With Avalanche, what they're doing is they're going out kind of on hub and spoke. So Avalanche Hub, and going out to spokes to individual projects, and then giving the vehicle the tool set to be able to initiate that, much like what their partnership was with AWS. Two different strategies going out very similarly and trying to get Web 3 and Web 2 to cross over. That's the key here, and I think both these projects are right in the middle of it, which is why we like both of these projects. Here's Mance going on also about more decentralization. Listen to this.
It's decentralized from the beginning, in that we now have 25 and we're growing to 39, and we keep that weighting across the council members in a decentralized way, on par with one another. Alternatively, you could think about the ordering of transactions. Are you decentralized in governance? Are you decentralized in the ordering of transactions? Again, when we have the council members all running the nodes, their weight on the order of the transactions flowing into the network is on par with one another. So you have 25 nodes that are putting transactions in order. You compare that to, say, Bitcoin. Bitcoin today has half a dozen or fewer mining companies that pretty much control the more than 50% of the hashing power of.
All right, so you get the point here, is that this decentralized model that is weighted equally around, much like a DAO. Well, I guess not like a DAO, because a DAO is whoever has the most control gets the the highest. This is a very interesting approach to it. And when you look at, I'll show you a chart here in a second of what this means, from a global architecture standpoint of decentralization, equal, weighting, especially at enterprise, with an enterprise scalability and the ability to plug into all these different industry sectors, and then whoever are the power players in the industry sectors. The only thing that I would draw back on with HBAR strategy is you are leaning on these 39, meaning that they have to essentially, now maybe there's some plug and play if someone's not carrying their weight, but you have to really lean on them to innovate and to scale. That is the key that I think is, if there is an Achilles heel, that might be it. Here was the key metrics overview, just a quick one. Hedera ended Q4 with an all-time high TVL. They had multiple Hedera network services set all-time highs in terms of activity. And then the Governing Council added its 27th. This was the videos we just showed you, I think, were several months old. But just showing you that, the track is still on play. And you can see a lot of this here in terms of total transactions continuing to climb from Q1 22 all the way back to Q4 21, down to where we are right now in Q4 22. And that was essentially one of the worst quarters of last year. Daily active users still kind of growing, but it's a small group. I think this will be important. But the new accounts are big. These have been consistently growing. You'll notice here all the way up to 213K. Obviously, we haven't seen quarter one for 23 yet. And then The other one that I think has a potential is the token service, the daily active users continuing to what has been, well, let's look at this, Q1 through 4 of last year, almost a 3x. No, not quite, about 2.5x on that. So not bad in terms of performance. So kudos to the Hedera team. You look at also the developers. This is hard to read, so I'll just tell you. Hedera is essentially that purple line, and they, along with Avalanche, are the top 2 sectors of developer growth. So again, this starts to open in there. Hedera is now ranked 5 for active contributors, number 6 for active development. Very strong and sustainable growth now for 2023, and I think this is, again, just shows how quickly they're moving, up the chain. This is a very good example of the decentralized focus of Hedera, and I want to go to this chart right here. I'm going to go over here to their Hedera Explorer, but you guys can go check this out. Just go over to hederaexplorer.io. You'll find this. Gets into all things price, but what I really like is the consensus scenario, because it paints out all of the transactions and then it goes into the council nodes themselves. So each one, if you look, here's LG. We'll take a look at some. There's Google right there, Boeing, IBM, Avery. Let's see who else is another one big in here further on. Oh, Ubisoft. Yeah, big one down there. And even if you click on Ubisoft, this is essentially where their node is placed out in Southeast Asia. So again, decentralization, equal weighting, enterprise 2 to 3, having a tool set to scale, and then you have a token that basically is backing that up. I think this is one of those projects that could be in store for some very interesting growth. We'll continue to track it and make sure that that is the case. It is tracked on our CPI. We do a breakdown on those within our CPI. Make sure and join our new Substack, which is where our Diamond Circle is now. All you have to do is go to pbn3.substack and you'll find us over there. That's our Diamond Circle, and it's where we drop all of our stuff. So make sure and check that out. Let's go over to the poll and see what's up there. All right, here we go. What's the better blockchain for enterprise solutions? HBAR, Avalanche, others. Okay, well, of course, HBAR coming in. Interesting. I think it's going to be a challenge because as I've said, we've done partnerships like this before with other industries and stuff, and when you lean on someone they become the controlling factor of your growth. Unless they're all in, which I understand the parameters that you have to become a governing council member, they're high. Probably there's a certain amount of limitations or expectations you have to deliver on constantly to be able to maintain that. That is good because I think that will continue to push that opportunity out there for sure. Let's go to a couple of questions. And what price would you be looking at to buy? Let me pull that one up because we are actually in HBAR. Let's see. All right, so don't show this because we're getting ready to do a big portfolio. But so the entry point that we had on HBAR was at 0.039. We have an exit at 0.09 that we're looking at. Let me jump over to TradingView and just take a look at where we are on that real quick, and I'll answer that question. Let's go down here to HBAR. All right, so we're hovering at the 0.07 right now. It's still on a green candle. This is the daily. Jump over here to the 4-hour. You can see a little bit of movement here. So it's still on a green candle for the daily. We'll see how that closes. But right now, up from when we were grabbing this from our Jan 6, which was back in about right here, 03. Was our move. So we are looking at a potential exit. Now, would I get in on Hedera right now? Based on what I know with where this is going, and again, not financial advice, but we're a research company. We dive into this mainly for our own efforts, but education in the aspect of how blockchain is going, but really where I think Web3 and enterprise is going to be going and connecting the dots. Hedera is one of, I would say, the top 3 projects out there that could make this reality happen. So with that being the case, then it is one that I look more of a long-term hold. So I would probably take a look, had I not already entered on this one, of looking at maybe grabbing some more. Now I would maybe try to see if it comes back down to around 6 cents, or yeah, right around 6. If it does, then that would be a big zone right there. But obviously you've got some support here. Kind of break this out, you see that support level right there at about 7.3, and then you can go way back out into looking at Hedera, and you can kind of see it has had some pretty interesting highs up here. So there's a lot of room up here, and that was when it was in its early state, prior to the state in which we'll see this developed governing council and the potential for really scale. That's the thing that will be the magic element, much like with Avalanche. Avalanche has the same kind of scenario that could happen. But the thing with Avalanche, and this is, I go back and forth on this because they're that hub and spoke, they're going out to each individual project. Sometimes I feel like that's too slow when you need to move fast, versus if you go with the bulk on the governing councils and they scale, someone like a Dell, and Dell has thousands of customers, hundreds of utility use cases, and they scale one and they end up with a new project or something. Now, Amazon could do this too, and with the aid of Avalanche. So there's some potential there of really kind of leveraging up. All right, here we go. A couple other things. People don't understand the decentralized. It's not about the control of the coins, but the control of the data. That is correct, and the blockchain. Here we go. Microsoft on a couple of these tech crypto companies already. Yes, for sure. Dominic says, hey, Paul, as centralized as HBAR is, do you think they will become decentralized as there is a roadmap suggests? I think that still has to prove out, of that, especially around, if you follow tokenomics, that's another thing many of you guys will probably do. You guys will know that's less of a concern for us. What we look for is the upside in scalability and the potential of what partnerships, because that usually is the fundamentals that drive price action, which is really kind of what we look at anyway, because that's, what you're dealing with. All right, so we're going to do a 3 o'clock for you guys today. It's a portfolio update. So there's a lot of new entries I've done over the past few weeks, and we probably should do those more often, but sometimes I feel it's just too much. But we will do it today at 3, so check out our live stream at 3. We'll do a full portfolio update, including our swing trades and some of our high-risk tokens. We've got a handful that won't be on this one, but probably in our next one, of getting ready for metaverse tokens. So be on the lookout for that one as well. Again, as I said, get in on the Diamond Circle. It's free and easy. Make sure and just click the link below. If you guys want to reach me, it's out there on Twitter, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.